Welcome to the Father Focus podcast.
Father Focus.
Check.
Why are we talking about this? Why does it matter?
So shaping your kids into powerful people.
Bro, let that brother fly.
Check.
All right, let's
Guys,
go.
you ready?
All right, let's go. I was messing. Welcome to the Father Focus podcast. We are your host, and we are so happy to have you joining us. I'm with my awesome friend, Jermaine.
What's up, everybody?
What's up, Jermaine Stewart? Man,
What's
you
up,
doing
man?
great?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
Man,
Hi, Hello Labs in Orlando. Excited.
I just hit my
Just
knee
hit us.
on this
We're
table.
excited.
Ow!
Carlos, this man is done, bro.
Man,
Help me.
this table is a little low for a manly legs like mine. Jermaine doesn't know anything about this, but yeah, lifted my leg, got hit there. But listen, we're so happy to have you with us at Hi Hello Labs. It is a great privilege to have you and tuning in to Father Focus podcast. If you can, we'd love for you to share this content, like, subscribe, follow us. Got some great things happening. We have a great interview with somebody that I'm very close with. Been knowing him for about 11 years. Been an
It's a long
exciting
time.
ride. Yeah, Jermaine knows him as well. Actually, Pastor Jay Coleman, if you would please.
Give it up for him.
How's it going?
Hey guys, how y'all doing today?
Hey, we're
Good.
thrilled to have you here.
Good to be able to be with y'all. Thank y'all for having me.
Yeah, so just a little bit about him, and I guess I'll start off. And had been a pastor for a long time. How many years total?
22 years.
22 years.
Well, no, correction.
Okay, I was about to say.
Things correct. In October the 1st is 22 years.
October, 22 years. I've been at the church, hired me about 11 years ago. And I can say for all of you listening, great pastor. I've met a lot of pastors, and he's got probably without exception, I don't know any pastor who has more love for his people than he does, and he displays it in the way he acts, the way he interacts with people. The decisions that are made are all calculated by, what is going to be best for the people, and just it's an amazing experience. Some people have had experiences at churches. I know our church hurt is a thing. We're
It's a
going to
real
be
thing.
talking about
Yeah.
it through the next through this season 3, a little bit. I've not had that experience. Worked with a great man. Been married for how many years?
32 years.
32 years, 3 sons, and we're gonna hear a little bit about your story. Wait,
5 grandchildren.
Oh,
I was gonna say,
5
what the
grandkids.
grandkids? You forgot about it. He's gonna call
Father
you up.
focus, also grandfather focus a
Come
little
on.
bit. That's where he's focused right now.
He's like, amen.
We had the grandbabies for 3 nights this past week, and I can tell you, I was worn out whenever they left and went home. But it was awesome. There's nothing in the world like spending time with your kids, and then later in life, your grandbabies. So love it, absolutely love it.
Yeah, I think my parents would say, "Man, I love having them over, but I love sending them back home."
That's a fact. When they stay overnight, your sleep cycle gets messed up, and that's not a big deal when you're young. But when you get a little bit older, oh, man, watch out. But look, it's nothing like it. I love it.
Yeah, so 5 grandkids. Just not long ago, a few days ago, as a matter of fact, had his 5th grandkid, a little baby boy.
Yep, another boy. He looks like a Coleman, Luke William, and I got to say this strong name. I love his name. I told Tyler, I said that is the Luke's, writing style. I love it. This is my favorite gospel. I love the Book of Acts. Love his writing style. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm speaking prophetically or whatnot, but hey.
Maybe you'll have a writer on your hands.
Maybe a writer on your hands who will write great things for the Lord.
Yeah. So, again, thank you for having us. Thank you for being with us on the podcast. And I'd like to just kind of get a little bit of the story, your background story. We've all kind of opened up. Jermaine has about his background and, growing up without a dad, a father figure. And we've had a blend. Nathan and I both have had great relationships with our dads. Tell us a little bit about your story, how you were raised, where you're from, and how you, I guess, got to the point in 2002 you moved to Baton Rouge, to Central, to essentially take over a church, then launch a church. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, my mom and my biological father were high school sweethearts, and they, not long after they graduated high school, my dad joined the Air Force. My mom went away to college. And my mom tells the story that she came home for Christmas break and my dad talked her into getting married. So she left school, they got married, and started a very tumultuous relationship between them. She saw a side of him she had never seen. As he is now adulting, he's away from his parents, and he started drinking. He started running around on her with other women, and he started actually not necessarily putting his hands on her, but it was trending in that direction.
Yeah,
And
threatening.
so
Wow.
my mom, before she got pregnant with me, they actually had gone their separate ways. They got back together, tried to work things out. And then she found out she was pregnant with me. Well, he takes off with another woman. So here she is, a single mom. She's pregnant with me. She has my sister at this point, who is about 2 years old, and she is a single mom. She moves in with my grandparents, has me. My dad, from that point forward, I say dad, my biological father really was not a present in my life very much. So my grandparents take her in. She lives with them, eventually moves out, gets her own place. And whenever I was 18 months old, at church, she meets my dad. And when I say my dad, I'm specifically talking about my stepfather, but he took me as his own. He raised me as his own. And everything that I attribute to, I think back what my life would look like if my mom had stayed with my biological father. There's no telling, because the life that he lived was pretty rough. He died when he was about 54, 55 years old because of the way he abused his body. With alcohol, smoking, an unhealthy lifestyle, did not live for the Lord. But my dad, when she met him in church. He was actually taking some courses, training in ministry. And even though he never went forward with ministry aspirations, he raised me and did all the things that a dad should do with a son. He took me hunting, took me fishing, coached my ball teams. He taught me how to be a man. But the most important things that he taught me was how to pray. He taught me how to read the Bible, a hunger for the Word of God. He taught me how to lead my family. He taught me how to have a hunger and a thirst for the things of God. And here's the deal. My dad's kind of a quiet guy. He's hard of hearing. He did not teach me these things by necessarily telling me. He taught me these things by displaying them to me every day. And so my dad's 87, my mom's 77, and I can't, my mom was great. She's a great mom. And even at the age that they are, tremendous relationship with them. We're at the age space now where I'm taking care of them, helping them as much as I can. Fast forward from that, 18 years old, I met my wife in a nursing home. I love to tell people that. She's a little bit older than me. But
Man.
I was working there. Huh? What's that, Jermaine?
I was like, man, we're in trouble.
He's in trouble.
When your
We're not in
wife
trouble.
hears this, woo,
This brother trolling the nursing homes, picking up women.
that's what I'm saying.
I actually got a summer job because I wanted to go to nursing school, and my wife was home from college. She was working at this nursing home as well. We would pass each other at the time clock, and eventually we struck up a conversation. We started dating, and now, as I said earlier, we've been married 32 years. She was in Bible school, by the way. I was going to go to nursing school, had no desire to be in ministry whatsoever. I had gotten born again about a month before I met her. And fortunately for her and me both, whenever I told her when I met her, I was a born again believer, she told me, said, I've heard that from all these guys in church. They tell me they're a Christian. And then we go out on a date and it's not so. And so she said, you're going to have to show me that you're a Christian. Prove it to me. And so that's what I was up against. So I loved her. Well, I say I loved her. She was so good looking. I'm like, yeah, let me prove this to you. And so just live Jesus in front of her. We started dating, and lo and behold, as we got married 2 years later, we wound up as youth pastors at a little church in Louisiana, and just were faithful there as volunteers. Eventually the door opened. Had no desire to step into ministry full time, but as the Lord opened doors, we stepped through them.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
So I don't know where you guys want to jump in
No,
here.
so you stepped into ministry young. You're just married, I think, a couple of years, you said.
Yeah, I was 22 when we stepped into ministry.
22.
You volunteer for how long? Did he volunteer before that?
Yeah. It was
We volunteered for about 2 years.
In ministry.
And when the pastor that he had kind of raised us up in ministry, he came to us one day and said, hey, there's a church that's interested in you. And so we pursued that. He took us down. We interviewed with this church in Lafayette. And I know you guys have listeners from all over. If you have never been to Lafayette, Louisiana, it's one of the greatest places. Best food. The people there are amazing. And we had the opportunity to serve with the Miller family in Lafayette at the family church. Tremendous ministry. And one of the things I love about Pastor Miller, he was a man's man. He could be a little tough on you sometimes, but and I've told Jeremy some stories, but he was a man's man. He did not, he wasn't soft, he wasn't effeminate, and he was just a manly man. To be able to be raised up in ministry underneath him was a tremendous thing. So we stayed there for about 8 years and had every aspect
Yep.
of ministry. We were children's pastors, junior high youth pastors, worked in the media department, worship, singles pastors. We did it all.
So then you, I think it was 2002, y'all moved from there, from Lafayette to right outside Baton Rouge, Central. And tell us a little bit about that. And then you had, in the meantime, in Lafayette, you had three sons, pretty close in age, and with young sons, a young family moved to Baton Rouge.
Yes, when we were in Lafayette, we had another ministry of producing children because it seemed like my wife was always pregnant, and we went through. Jeremy, you know exactly what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. 5 kids in however
Yeah.
many years, but Jermaine, how many children do you have again? You
I
got
have four.
three?
Four.
Four. Okay.
Yep.
So you guys know what I'm talking about. It's like you're in a season of life where
Yeah.
your wife's just always pregnant, and you got littles all over the place. And while we were there, three sons, the door opens up because I was content in Lafayette. I would have stayed there forever, but the Lord, He put discontent with like a stirring
Yeah. Plucked you
inside
up,
of me.
huh?
I couldn't get away from it. And I remember we had the opportunity to come to Baton Rouge. We had said there was only one city in one city in Louisiana that we would move to, and it was Baton Rouge. And lo and behold, church opens up. There's about 35 people in the church, and the congregation was predominantly an older congregation, but they had been praying for someone who could take them to the place of reaching new families and young families. And so the door opened up. We uprooted everything and moved here, and have been here now for like we said earlier, for almost 22 years.
So this is an interesting thought, and I know a lot of people wrestle with this. So you're not a businessman, you're a pastor. Your organization belongs to Jesus Christ, right? But there are people out there who are building businesses, and there are some similarities. Like the church, in a certain sense, I mean, it has money. You have to have an accountant. You have to have certain things. We want to keep up with the IRS. We want to be a blessing to our staff. All these different things. As the church and the ministry is getting bigger, there's some similar characteristics between that and in a business. So what's interesting to me is that you moved. I think you said Tyler was about 7, Reese was 2 or 3 at the time. So you were doing all this with very young kids, a young family, and there are a lot of young families, young fathers who are listening to us, people who have families, and they have aspirations, multiple different facets of those aspirations, and without a doubt, business aspirations, going out and making money, succeeding at whatever it is that we're putting our hands to. But then I don't know of very many dads, not a good dad by any stretch of the imagination, would say, I'm going to neglect my family. That's not his active choice. People may do it passively, but
Right.
not actively neglect their family. And we're talking about a good dad. So
Yep.
that's my the little asterisk. Good dads do not purposefully neglect their family for their business. Does happen, at times. And so we wrestle through that. And my point was, we have multiple different streams that we have our hands in. We're wanting to bless this part of our life. We're wanting God to bless this business, church, whatever it is that we're doing, whatever our work is, whatever our job is, whatever our vocation, again, which means just calling, whatever our calling is, we want God's hand in on it. We want it to prosper. But then we also want our kids to be blessed. We want them to have good educations. We want them to learn about our culture. We want to learn them about history. We want them to learn about art and sports, science, mathematics, and that they're well-rounded kids. How did you do that coming into a place where you had to go to work Like you didn't come into this dynasty. You didn't come into this, you're all of a sudden in charge of, 50 staff members and there's everyone serving you. You were the guy going out there fixing toilets, painting, cutting grass. That people may not know that. But you were out there going to build something. How did you manage the tension between those two worlds?
Well, I think that a lot of people don't realize within a church there is the business side of it.
Right.
I think a lot of people realize that, but they don't like talking about that. And pastors are not trained up to be necessarily business leaders. We're raised up to be theologians, to study the Word and present the truths of what the Word tells people to help them grow spiritually and come into that relationship with Christ and walk in it. But at the same time, you're also dealing with budgets. You're also having to deal with making sure that we want to be able to purchase this piece of property and build this building. And that's probably one of my favorite things out of everything is building. I love construction. It's just one of the things that I've always enjoyed doing. And for me, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I always got it right. There's a lot of things that I look back now and I wish I could have done this a little bit differently. I would say that the most important thing in whether it's your business or it's a church, unity between you and your spouse are the most important thing in the entire world. I'm going to be in unity with the Lord. I'm going to walk in the wisdom of the Holy Spirit, but I'm also called to take care of and provide for my family. And the Lord has provided for us to be able to do that through ministry. But if Stacy and I are at odds with each other, if we have different, ideas on stuff. So anytime the Lord would put something in front of me, I would always say, hey, what are your thoughts on let's pray about this together. And we would make sure that we came together in unity, whether it was for the church or whether it was for our family. And then we also recognized that in ministry, there were just going to be busy seasons. We knew, hey, we're going into this building project the next 3 months, 4 months. We're going to be swamped and we're going to rest before and we're going to rest after. But while we're in the middle of it, we're going to run the race. And, with the kiddos, one of the things in ministry that we struck at the very beginning of pastoring was this: we can reach the whole world for Christ, but the most important thing for me is to reach my family for Christ. I don't want to see all these people in heaven that we've won through the ministry and then I lose my kids to the world, because I've actually witnessed that with different people. Different ministers seeing, that they basically their family was on the way, off to the side while they were doing ministry. Yeah. And and Jeremy, you've seen this. We kind of do ministry as a family. We always have. We've got the boys involved. We want them serving and helping. And we want them to take ownership of the church. Not like, hey, we possess this church, it's ours. But as the body of Christ, we are a part of the church. And this is our church. We're very well vested. So for us, that worked well, having everybody involved. And we knew when it was time to back, hey, we need to back off, take a trip, take a couple of days, away or whatever as a family. So I don't know if that's answered you.
And you mentioned unity with your wife. I was just curious, in those days of volunteerism, you mentioned, we kind of skimmed over it real quick, cutting the grass. I mean, what was that like for you? You for 2 years, you're volunteering. What was that like for your wife during that time? And then what would you say, like, my question is, where did you get those values from? So for 2 years you were volunteering, you're painting, you're cutting the grass, you're doing whatever needs to be done, right?
Or even in the beginning, when the church started, not even volunteering is being paid, but there's no staff.
Right. So
there are some people out there. That's a good question, Jermaine. There's some people out there who are starting a business. Well, you got to do all the grunt work. He was doing all the grunt work. I know he told me on Saturdays, I think you were taking your own personal lawnmower. I don't have to, cutting the grass, things like that.
Well, when we moved there, we took the church, and probably about 6 months into, taking the church, the cleaning lady that we had who worked for next to nothing, she said, I can't do this anymore. We did not have the budget at that point to really pay anybody to clean. And so for 6 months I said, well, I'll be the janitor too. And I just kind of took it on as like, hey, I had a system. I know how to work systems. I know how to get this done efficiently and stuff. And Jeremy knows I love to clean. I mean, I like stuff clean. And so anyway, I would get in there and clean the church. I think I was scheduled off on Tuesdays or on Thursdays. And it took me 6 hours from start to finish to, go through the auditorium, go through all the different rooms, clean everything. And a lot of people don't realize that while you're a pastor, you think, well, he's there preaching on Sunday morning. That's the only thing he's doing. That's the only
thing.
He
play golf the rest of the time, right?
Exactly. No, he's there doing stuff behind the scenes. And here's the cool part. when the board interviewed us, I told them, guys, this is the deal of a lifetime. You're getting a twofer. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, my wife and I do everything together. We've always been in unity. We've always done everything together. And all the way through, and Jeremy knows this, my wife has been right there with me every step of the way. And guess what? Whenever I was cleaning the bathroom, she was running a vacuum cleaner.
Wow.
And whenever I was on that lawnmower, she was inside making sure the paperwork was organized for Sunday morning children's church, that everything was curriculum was printed out. Now, we've always had great volunteers. The serve team with the church is amazing. But, administratively, you have to be behind the scenes. And 2008, we were able to hire some staff members. Praise the Lord.
Come on.
And got some help in the process.
Yeah. Where did those values come from, Jay? What would you say, like, where did those particular values come from? You have people today.
The serving part.
Yeah, the serving and the volunteerism. It's hard to get volunteers sometimes. It seems like in this generation, people want
the platform.
First, without the process. They got this promise from God, and I'm going to change the world. But there's a process that you went through of serving and cleaning and grinding. Where did those values come from? What do you think?
I honestly think everything has to be rooted in we could go to the spiritual side, but let me talk about it like this. I think it has to be rooted in work ethic. You better have some strong work ethic, especially you're going in ministry. You're already battling the perception of other people that if you're in ministry, you're lazy.
Mm-hmm.
And, you don't really like to work. You don't know how to work. My dad and mom, we worked, I'm from Dry Prong, Louisiana. So that's a rural community, and we lived out in the woods, and we worked hard, and we did stuff, and we had gardens, and my dad taught me how to work. It wasn't one of these things you watch me work. It was, you come work alongside of me. And I did the same thing with my sons, raising them up. If we had a construction project at the church, they were out there picking up stuff, keeping the job site clean, making sure everything. And so take that from the aspect of with family, take it to the volunteers within the church. Too many pastors want to stand back and point the finger and tell people what to do and not do it themselves. You better be modeling that in front of people. If you want volunteers, they're gonna follow you and follow what you're doing. They're not just gonna do what you tell them to do.
Right.
And so you better be modeling that from now. As I've gotten a little bit older, and now we do have some staff, and we do have more. I find a lot of stuff is taken off my plate. I don't have to get out and do the flower beds anymore. Praise the Lord.
Yeah.
But it's being able to do those things without telling people what to do, but being there. And our philosophy within ministry has always been the same. I'm never going to ask you to do anything I'm not willing to do myself. You clean a toilet. Guess what? I've cleaned toilets as well. You do the flower beds. I've done the flower beds. And if you need help, I'll jump in there and help you. So I think that goes a long ways with not just your family, but within volunteers. And even in the workplace, if you are a boss, if you've got your own business, you better be willing. Don't just tell people, don't be a dictator telling people what to do, but get in the trenches with them and work alongside of them.
Yeah. I've said this, I have learned, I would say my parenting tool bag. I have so many different things from a few different people that I've gleaned from peers, people older than me. We've talked about Bernie, who's been on our podcast before, learned a good bit from him. I've learned things from Jermaine and Nathan, things that they've implemented. I'll tell you, there's also been things that I've learned from my pastor, from Pastor Jay. I think it was last summer. He challenged me, and he did it very gracefully, but I needed to do my flower bed, and he had just got a trailer from his dad, gave him a trailer, and he fixed it up. So I'm like, hey, can I borrow your trailer? I need to go get some dirt for my flower beds or mulch, whatever it was. And he's like, yeah, come on over. So I'm loading it up, and he just looked at me, and he's like, hey, you're going to have Judah help you, right? And I'm like, no. And he went, yeah, you need to have Judah helping you. I think he was about 9 at the time. And I'm like, a 9-year-old? And I'm starting to think, I never thought about it because I'm still thinking he's young. And he's like, no, dude, I'm thinking, no, he can't help me. He's 9. And he's like, no, dude, he needs to help you. He's 9. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he needs to help me.
He's 9.
He's 9. You're right. And what did I do? I get home, and I didn't prep him for it. And man, it was amazing. I got home, I got the mulch and everything. Pull up in the driveway, and he's inside just playing with toys, being a boy. I'm like, Judah, you want to help Dad? And dude, he lit up.
Oh,
he lit up. And I was like, oh, dude,
Yeah, I almost
did I
missed it.
did I mess up for
Yeah.
not doing this last year? And I'm just like, those are the things that I think, it's somewhere along the way, it's been instilled with you. Your dad, mom pushed you from a young age. You, without a doubt, pushed your kids from a young age, and you're pushing me to push my kids. And can you speak to that a little bit? You kind of mentioned it, the building projects, but how you taught your boys, your sons, to work from a young age.
Well, I didn't ask my kids if they wanted to work or they wanted a job. I told them you're going to work. You're going to have a job. It's kind of like, whenever we started this at 7, 8, 9 years old. When we moved here and started pastoring, Tyler was 7, and he would come up to the church and help pick up sticks. Like, get out there and pick up sticks. I'll pay you, $1 a day or something like that. It was trying to teach him that. And
Get moving.
As his brothers came along with that, we tried to do the same thing with them as well, just trying to teach them that work ethic, because you got too many guys 25, 28, 30 years old sleeping in the basement at mom and dad's house and don't really have an idea as to what they want to do. And I think that could be, I don't want to get controversial here. I think it could be blamed on dads not really helping their children, especially their sons, understand the purpose and the calling that God has for their life, the potential that God has for their life. So you better be teaching your sons how to work, how to be men, how to be manly men, not girly men. And I would say this as well for me with the boys. I just, I roughed them up. We wrestled. We did all the stuff that guys like to do. But the most important thing, 2 things: love Jesus, and you better love to work, because you can have a family one day to support. Now, all along, we had at the church, it started off Tyler 7 years old, but then it moved from that, cutting grass. And Jeremy, Judah's old enough this year for you to have him in the yard cutting the grass.
No, he's been cutting grass since last year after that
Praise
flower
the
bed.
Lord.
Come on, he's been out working, pushing that lawnmower.
It was kind of a culture shock for me, because the 3 sons, I didn't cut grass for years. And then they moved out a couple of years ago. They got married and moved out. And I'm like, oh, I got to start cutting the grass.
Back to it.
And they actually came over and they made a comment like, man, who did your yard? And I said, I did. And they were like, no, you didn't. You hired somebody. I cut that grass. So it looks better when y'all did.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, that work ethic is important. I'm just curious because, in the questions, we see a lot of people not wanting to work, not wanting to volunteer, or seeing things, wanting things easy. And I think even social media, at some point, we see this. People can immediately get a following, but they haven't learned how to work. They haven't learned, what I'm saying? They haven't learned. They want the platform, they want the stage, and they get it immediately without the work ethic that goes along with it, right? They don't have the days like you with your sons working and building up. And now your sons are successful in what they're doing because they learned to work. What would you say to this generation? Like, are you seeing that? Like, you mentioned it a little bit, like this lack of work ethic and lack of work, get it done type. And what would you say to that? What's led to that, and how can we change it?
Well, I think it's kind of funny. We've talked about this in the office. Every generation, like where I am generationally, it's funny because you look around at my peers, and a lot of times they're griping about the generations behind them. Whenever I was young, the generations in front of us griped about us. Every generation's got gripes about the generation behind it. So now the gripe is, well, they don't know how to work, or they don't want to work, or this, that, and the other. And honestly, some of that's probably our fault. I'm talking about my generation's fault, because a lot of times we poured ourselves into our job, but did we really teach our children the importance of work ethic and really teach them the importance of seeing a job through, or the quality of the work? Did we really teach them that? And so I think that there's probably, if there's blame to be laid, it's all the way around. So a young person, possibly listening to this podcast, or a single mom listening for, she's got, sons that are 12 and 14 years old. I would tell, put responsibilities on their life and make sure that they follow through with those responsibilities. And if they don't, there's consequences there for those, not being able to do that. If they're 13, 14 years old, make them get a job in the summertime. Right. Yeah, I get it. Nobody's probably going to hire them, but they can get out in the community and find laws.
Add value. Yeah.
Yeah, they can find something to do to make a little extra money, and quit paying all their bills.
Right.
For my sons, whenever if they wanted something, I always told them this. Tyler wanted a guitar. Well, we'll pay half. You have to earn the rest of it. And if that's what you want, you've got to pay the other half.
Ramsey.
when they started driving, I'm not paying for your vehicle. If you either pay the gas or the insurance, I'll pay the other. You got to have skin in the game. When they went to college, I'll pay a little bit, and you're going to pay. You're going to have skin in the game. I think too many times we just give our kids everything instead of making them step up and realize that if you want anything in life, it comes along with hard work.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times we're crippling our kids. I mean, go to some of the high schools and drive around the parking lot. They got nicer vehicles than we have.
Yeah.
And I'm like, stop all that. Give them an old beater because they're going to tear it up,
Right.
and make them work for it. And I think a lot of times we've hurt our kids by wanting to give them better than we had. And the reality is, I had an old beat up Pontiac whenever my first car. And for my kids, the first vehicle they got was an old beat up blue truck that they loved, and they learned to drive with that. So,
Hey, let me ask you this, kind of shooting off the hip. What would you say has been like one of the harder things about raising 3 sons? I mean, that's like, I think we all have wrestled with being a dad, being a parent. And I know your sons. You have 3 great sons, great family. But without a doubt, there were stressful times like in anybody's life. You have the church is young, maybe fragile. You have a young family you're wanting to pour into. Like, what would you say is like one of the harder parts about, like, man, I got to raise these 3 boys, like these 3 lives? Like, did you say there's any like one thing that, like, dude, that was hard to do that? Was there anything that sticks out? Or
Well, I know when I was at the hospital, I just like, Lord, please don't let me mess them up. We all know that there's different seasons to life. Probably one of the greatest joys was baptizing my sons, being able to have that opportunity to baptize them, having the opportunity to really, help disciple them. I honestly, I wish I'd have done a better job. That's kind of, Jeremy, I've talked about that. I taught them the importance of praying and whatnot, but I really felt like I probably could have done a little bit better job discipling them. And I would say that probably the biggest challenge when we got into those teenage years, I just didn't want to see them repeat the same mistakes that I made as a teenager.
Sure.
And do the things, living in sin, alcohol, these different things, the mistakes that I made. And my kids are not perfect. They made some mistakes as teenagers, and just knowing that and trying to walk that line of being, patient and gracious as a parent, but also laying down the law, learning the balance there to not push them away by being, judgmental or harsh in a way that would push them away, but also laying down the law, like, this is not allowed in our house. If you're going to live here, these are the rules, and you're not going to violate this. But also knowing that as teenagers, they're going to make mistakes. They're going to, when they're in college, they start getting, some more freedom because they're adults now, but they're still going to do dumb things. I just didn't want to see them make the same mistakes that I made. And as a dad, I can tell you that took a lot of time. Me and their mom both on our knees, just praying, trusting the Lord for them.
Jermaine, did you, like, when you were younger? I don't know if we've ever discussed this. Did you were raised by your mom? Did you have like kind of an open door, like you just came and left whenever you wanted? Did they have did she have hard rules for you?
Yeah, my mom, she had hard rules for us for sure. And I mean, and my thing was, I saw firsthand the consequences of bad decisions. So there was no buffer for me. So when my dad wasn't there, when my older brother or my other siblings were making decisions that were unwise, I saw firsthand.
Okay.
Like, oh, there,
Don't do
like
that.
yeah, because for example, a lot of kids, they get drunk, they get put in jail. Their dad's going to come bail them out. We didn't have that. I'm bailing him out. And so. And so that was something that I watched. My mom did have strict rules. She tried to, but we did have a lot of time because she's working and a lot of freedom, but I just didn't. One, I learned from their consequences. And then 2, I didn't want to cause her any more pain. I didn't want to be, she had enough grief with no men in her life. And then she had the hardship of my older siblings doing what they were doing. So I had this awareness of, I don't want those consequences and also I don't want to cause her any more pain. So a lot of things I didn't really get involved and I didn't get into because of the immediate consequences. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I think for me, and I don't know, Pastor Jay, you talk about this too, but for me, I remember growing up in a Christian home, I felt like my parents had some heavy rules on us at times. Not all the time. We had a lot of freedom. We had a lot of fun. We can come and go as we pleased, and but there were some elements of like, man, this is we have a lot of rules. And now I'm on this side. I'm like, no, 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 no. Like those rules were really guardrails for us. And they
Right.
just tried to keep us, there was freedom inside of those
Right.
rules. I just, maybe my sinful heart wanted to go on the outside of them. And, but now I'm like, no, those were good rules.
Mhm.
The fact that it didn't let me go spend the night at all these strangers' houses while all my other friends could do it. And back in the day, some of those things were not as,
and and now some of them need therapy as a result.
Yeah, seriously.
yeah, no, seriously. And now I'm just like, my goodness, and I don't know if you felt that way, and how you navigate like, man, our kids and like, okay, because that's something I think that I'm personally in right now of, all right, the tension between, all right, we have these rules, how loose, how strict are we going to be, how dogmatic on those rules? Like that's a hard thing, because like you're saying, like I want my kids to have fun. I want them to have fun in the context of certain culture, like our house has a culture and those cultural situations. And I'm just, every family's different, but did your parents have a lot of strict rules with you?
They did. I was the baby of the family, and my mom had gone back to work. She'd gone to nursing school. She was a nurse, so I hate to say it, but whenever my sophomore year she was in school, my junior year she went back to work, and I think my parents just kind of got to the place where maybe they were a little tired, and kind of, and so me as the caboose, they just kind of let, and I think my mom, it's funny because she'll say you were a good kid, and I think for the most
You
part,
didn't
in
like
her
murder
mind, I
anybody.
was correct. But now I tell her stories, of what some of the things I did, like stealing the family car and stuff like that. And she doesn't believe it. But it was because there was some more freedom there and I
Yeah,
took
yeah.
well advantage of it.
Mhm.
Now, and some of those things I learned from for my kids,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
and it was not my mom and dad's fault. They trusted me because I had put forth that I was a good kid. And I mean, I was, but at the same token, just like any kid, your kids will take full advantage of you if you let them.
Yeah. Let them run
And
over you.
and I did. So, but I watched them have some severe rules with my siblings, but for me, they loosened up considerably, and I took full advantage of it.
Yeah. So there's obviously a balance, I would say, for those
Yeah.
rules in the home, and just be gracious, be kind, and don't try to, control them so much. I think that's probably some of it's, and so I think some of the things that we covered in this episode are very beneficial. Hey, go to work. Like there are a lot of things um, that we want to achieve in life. Go and do that. Don't neglect your family in the middle of it. Go and teach your kids.
Involve them in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
involve them in your life as best you can. I mean, I know, maybe if you have a business, it's 9 to 5. If they're in school, during those times it may be hard, but talk to them, bring them along the journey, and I think it's going to be a great blessing for all of us to have that. So, yeah,
Can I throw one more thing in?
absolutely,
Because I said this a couple of times, unity with your spouse.
yes,
It's funny because my wife was always behind the scenes. A lot of times people see me, they don't necessarily see her, but unity with your spouse
Yeah.
is key, not only with your family, but in anything you do as a family.
Amen to that.
that's good. Well, listen, I want to thank everyone so much, and thank you, Pastor Jay, for joining us on the Father Focus podcast. And hey, if you have enjoyed this episode, we would love for you to like, share, subscribe, follow us on Facebook, Instagram,
Come on.
and listen. We are looking forward to all the things that are happening through the rest of this series. Hope you guys have a great, great, great day, and we'll see you next time. Stay tuned.